Please welcome Fabrizio on our stage. And there is no doubt we are going to have a great presentation.
Does it work? So, welcome everybody. So today, so I introduce briefly myself. So my name is Fabrizio. I work at Spriker. Spriker builds e-commerces, but I'm also passionate about bots. So both in the company and personally, I build voice and chatbots. So what I want to do today is I want to give you some insights on things that I've tried, things we did also for some of our clients. But mostly, like in the presentation, there are links and things for you to try. So I want after that you use this presentation. As I said, I want also to show some real examples, some things that can seem simple when you like you read somewhere in the blog, but when you start doing it, how complicated it can become. And then at the end, we can discuss solutions. If you have ideas, if you think like some things I said are not correct, you can come to me. You can say at the end. So why do I believe that the chat and voice bots are an important thing? It's because this is what we know as web today. And this is just a representation because Google has so many services. But this is what gives Google money, the search and all the advertisement. And the bots, for example, Alexa, are competing nowadays for what will be the next breakthrough, because the voice search is actually very important when you want to spend your money. They will think, you will say, I want to buy soap, I want to buy water, and you will need to pass through to Alexa or another device. As well as when you will use bots, for example, Facebook Messenger, then Facebook will hold the information and it can suggest you things like where you can buy shoes. So it's a very tough competition. And if you think about all the players, you can see that these companies are competing at different levels and in different ways. And sometimes they even get together. It's like against Google, for example, Alexa, Amazon with Microsoft against Google. And other players are, for example, Facebook and IBM. And they're competing strategically really like a chess board in different technologies, in different services. And because their goal is actually to find, to win, and then they will be the standard. But why they want to do that? Nowadays, if you think a typical day, you wake up, you use your phone, you then use your computer most of the day if you do an office job, and then in the evening you might use your smart TV or use your iPad, meanwhile you're watching your preferred TV series. And they figured out that there is a gap of time. So there are moments in which you rarely don't use your computer or your tablet, and they want to fill those gaps. They want to win your time. It can be a chatbot. When you're commuting, for example, it can tell you, oh, the perfume you wanted to buy for your wife is available. It can be that you are cooking and you want to order, I don't know, something that you forgot for the apartment. And this will force us as developers, as companies, whoever will be involved in the future in this field, to go from what is web nowadays. But web is kind of easy and it's standard nowadays. It's like you can have 50 results when you do the search. With JavaScript, when you respond to the page, 2 seconds is fine. When you already mobile shows you that you cannot have the same approach. You can literally not browse more than 10 results, or you want a fast response. So the voice and the chat was actually will force you to do even more. And doing that step will require even a lot of extra energy. Because if you're in a chatbot, you want to see 3 results, the 3 perfect shoes. If it's Alexa, you don't want Alexa reading a whole Wikipedia page. You want the 3 information you're asking for. And you want it fast. That's like very good mark, because you need to at least give a feedback fast. And you want to be able to pay on the spot, add to my cart, order online. So this is what, as people involved in technology, we will have to do in the future. Before going a little deeper into the building of bots, I want to tell you what is the similarities, which are the similarities of chat and voice bots, so that when you're going to build it, you are actually keep in mind this thing and you know what to do. If we think about similarities, you should think that both chat and voice bots convey small information. As I said, you don't give like a whole Wikipedia page or 50 results. Also, it's a trending change nowadays that you want to ask for information. You are overloaded, and even people like me that are not that young anymore still feel the need to ask for information. And I literally saw younger generation using their devices. For example, a guy was in Burger King and he was literally swiping in front of the cashier to look the menu that he could have watched. So this is the future of a user base that will use the bots. Also, the interaction is usually short. Now, if you think there are, of course, different cases in which you have like some Alexa skills that can give you, I don't know, narrate a story or something like that. But usually the interaction is short, and if it's good, it's even shorter. You ask, when is my flight? Is my flight on time? Where is my shipment? So if the answer is correct, you don't need to engage the user for a longer time. Another thing you need to keep in mind is chat and voice bots at different platforms can either give you the message itself, the text message, or can give you an intent. For example, Alexa, Amazon is famous because it matches the question you made, but it gives you back only the intent that is matched. So you don't have actually, you cannot not know what the user say. If you want to watch the differences, voice is better for informative skills. As I say, for something like narrate some stories, some games. Chatbots instead are more useful for on-the-spot information. It's my flight on time. Voice compared to chatbot is also more articulated. It's true that you use intents and so on, but even the answer needs to be more articulated. You want to know, okay, where is my shipment? Oh, I want to know about these shoes, but around $50. So it becomes more elaborated. Also, the use case is different. People using chatbots and voice bots are two different environments. So usually when you use your chatbot, you're using your mobile phone. Meanwhile, Alexa is a device that mostly you have at home. It's not completely true. But so you need to keep in mind when you're building what is the environment that the user will be when you're going to communicate something. And also they use different technologies, as we said. Amazon, Google, Facebook, they use different technology. You need to be aware how to build something that can kind of match everything. And I will show you some hints about it. So speaking of chatbots, I did this few applications, both with Spryker, with Symfony. I like to use Botman. Botman is a package that you can install for every PHP application with Composer. And then you need to use like a background, a Docker, but most importantly, you need to use something like a Grok, that is a tunneling system that allows your machine to communicate with Alexa or with the Facebook Messenger. So even the way you're going to develop is going to change, because you cannot just develop on your machine, refresh the page, and send it. You need to actually interact every time with the platform that provides you with the messaging service. Why did I choose Botman? One of the reasons is that Botman is very simple. It abstracts all the mess that you would have to do with like configuring the service for Facebook or for other platforms, and it gives you just giving you this small function is a big simplification, because you have this function here, and you can pass whatever you want as input. So it can be a single sentence, it can be one of the intents, it can match with natural language processing, it can use regular expressions, and then it delegates the answer to actually a class that is going to manage the conversation. And in this idea, you can later use this class to communicate either with Alexa or either with the Facebook. So you have these abstractions that will allow you to build the thing only once. Another important step you need to keep in mind is that you need to start thinking about conversation as grouping intents and sentences together to achieve a goal. Like you want to book an hotel, so first you search, then you filter, and then you confirm, then you pay, and so on. And Botman is already prepared to do that. So give me an example of a simple backend design with Botman. You would have your controller, you have a cache with Redis, usually. You can have a queue to answer, like in Facebook Messenger, especially is useful. You can give it, that you read the message and then you parse it later, so this comes back to a 100 milliseconds thing. And then you have your backend with your database, and then Botman allows you to connect immediately with WITAI or with, for example, Dialogflow. So actually, I wrote my own class to communicate with WITAI and to parse my intents in a specific way for my project. But you can connect to all the AWS, any API you want. I put REST because it's good if you use and build the RESTful API. But the concept is, if you think about why did I put IBM Watson in AWS, is because they give you some tools for speech recognition, for text-to-speech, for NLP, machine learning. So you can literally delegate to these tools, at least at the beginning, all the mass of dealing with the recognizing things that you don't have the knowledge now or the time to parse. I want you to take one moment to notice the cache in the WITAI and the Dialogflow, because later this will play a key role in how we're going to build the bot. So why did I choose WITAI? So WITAI is a company and is owned by Facebook, and they do natural language processing. It means you insert your sentence, you put some variables like city names, and then you can start literally, you write the sentences, and then you can match whatever you want. So, okay, this sentence, for example, is associated to an intent. In this example, I want to find a restaurant in Berlin. I gave a lot of thoughts, and I chose this tool, WITAI, because then it's a kind of a common language between Facebook, Alexa, Google. You're not linked to. I mean, this is free. It has an API you can communicate with. You don't need to pay anything. And so what you can do, you actually can use this common intent variables matching, so that later on you can even try to export for Alexa or for Google in the same way. If you would do just in Alexa, then you would be linked to only one platform. So that's why besides the intent, and in this case, my city is a slot, even Alexa called it a slot, is a variable. I figured that you need a context. And I will show you like a few slides why you need a context. And you can even do the subcontext. Context is a concept that already exists, for example, in Google Home, but it becomes very useful when you want to build conversations. I put also a reference for one word, so in the case of a chatbot, you don't know what to match, you can try to catch at least that single word. And it's a good practice, and WITAI allow you to put default answers when based on the variables. So you can literally say, okay, when it's Berlin, you can say, well, the best restaurants are, I don't know, in Kreuzberg. The number on the right is actually the confidence of the match. So you can even, when you're building your bot, you can even say, okay, my threshold for this matching should be 0.6, 0.7, and so on. Why did we do the context and the other parts? Because an example, it comes to my mind from Spryker, that actually we use a state machine. A state machine is just a simple, we encode it with it, we use XML to define a state machine. It's just a giant if else. It's like if this condition, then go here. I don't know, when we do for Spryker, it's like if the shipment is done, then you can return, and so on and so on. Because then you can start thinking, using the things I said before, to group by context different intents. And they can have their own state machine inside, but also as a block of context, they can also be a state machine itself. And in this case, it's like context 1 can be get a restaurant, context 2 can be get a tours. But then you can go further, and you can think there are cross-domain contexts, like navigation. If you saw shoe, you want to have like information to navigate. Okay, I want the next 3 results. or for example, to filters. Filters can be another context. And now in this idea, the subcontext actually identifies the different steps. And you can even say step 1, step 2, so you can link them. But to make this work, what you need is actually, of course, they can communicate. You need a session. So you need that cache, that Redis, to build a session. And what a session can have is something like the last intent, which context you are in, which item is selected, for example, if you have a location, if you have some filters. And this way, you are building now something that has a mind by itself, and it has a logic. And the complexity to build this compared to building a chat or voice bot with just as step 1, 2, 3 is much larger. I want to make an example for the location because it's really took me a lot of time for a project I'm doing. The user writes, okay, I want to find a restaurant in Berlin. So you use your session, you say, okay, Berlin. In my case, this small tool is for traveling, it's not ready yet. And so you say, okay, Berlin, you already say, okay, which airports are in Berlin? But then you can think, well, I can ask the user if you want to share its location so it can be more precise. And if it does, then I can get the latitude and longitude. I can get its address, I can get its zip code, so I can tell the restaurants nearby. So I'll give this example. And when you do that, you realize that, wait a minute, when you ask again without the location, or for example, if you ask which tours, or I don't know, which pubs, where is an ATM, you can actually use this information. But then you need to be smart. If you ask for another city, you need to kind of reset it, and then you need to delete the previous data. Another observation is you have latitude and longitude. Now, I don't know you, but for me this should have like a time to leave of maximum 3 hours. It's like I want also take care of the user, and I want him to feel safe that you never know. The data gets stolen, someone hacked your system, so you don't want to give away which user was where. So you want to put timeouts and delete this information with the pass of time. Maybe you can keep the zip code, because honestly, if you can find a person by zip code, you're quite smart. So yeah, but the concept is like the broader is the location, the longer can be the time that you keep it. For Alexa, actually, I want just to give a small panoramic. I don't know how many of you have already developed with Alexa. So Alexa works exactly the same way. You put your sentences, you have the slots. I actually recommend you to visit this link because it's made by Amazon and it's really clear. And I had the chance to speak with an Amazon evangelist, and they told me that they need to think literally as a conversation. Don't think about the technology. Think first, how would you speak with your grandmother? It's like, okay, your grandmother would speak with the bot, like, okay, I want this way and this way. And that's already a good starting point. So what you do is like you put your sentences, they will match an intent. In this case, it's called get a calendar by day, but that's matter. And then you have your slots that are like the variables. So it can be a list of cities, it can be, for example, the date. And once you have, you go in the Amazon skill creator, and then at the end you have this giant JSON that is a JSON model of your skill. But actually you can one day try to export this, create this JSON model by yourself with WTAI because it has exactly the same information. And then you can use tools like Skillinator. I know the name is funny. Skillinator created a Node.js Lambda function in AWS with placeholders. So even this is just a giant if else. If that intent, then do that action. If that intent, do this other action. And you can see that the part inside the Lambda function is really easy. You have your function. You can put some placeholder for the conversation. You take your information, you can parse it, and you get the right data. Then you have, of course, your API. And then you just do a call, and then for example, get post to your endpoint, and you just get passive response. Here I literally put two examples in GIST, so if you want to take it like a boilerplate for Alexa skills. Why this is important? Because you need to keep in mind that this is a simple conversation we did in Spryker. We were doing a hackathon thing for an event, and just to show like I want to order two products. I want two products with two variants. Do you confirm? Yes, your shipment is on the way. And this is what you have to start building when you do this. And why this is important? Because it has so many points, and on these points, this belongs to the model. So you write in Alexa or in WITAI. This belongs to the Lambda function, and this belongs to your application. So it's not that easy, for example, if you want to change the flow, you want to fix one sentence. So going further, you can see that now, with all these pieces, what you could try to build is like using WITAI to not only answer any messenger, and Botman would allow you to connect with WeChat and so on, but you can also try to export and build an AWS function, Lambda function, and connect with the two different platforms. And you can actually do it. There is a very amazing article that it tells you how to use AWS also with the Google Home. So this is literally thought to make you build as less code as possible, so it's more maintainable. If we want to speak, one of the reasons I want to speak about API design is when you do that, you can actually, as you see in the previous slide, you can actually export this information and then expose it in another controller, the API endpoint. You know, you build it. So you need to know the basics to build the API and to actually build also a conversation. So this is just few information. For example, if you do API design, I did in the past 3-4 years, and this is like the basic good practices that you can use. So you have HTTP verbs, please use it as described by when you build the REST APIs. For example, I like to build it like that you can only post on collections and you can only get and put and delete on elements and so on. And I always try to follow the response code, but it doesn't really matter. The important part is that you keep consistent across your application. And the most important is whenever you do one of these verbs, if you want to create something, you need to actually do something that is related. If you post, you insert a new element. If you get, you select. You cannot violate this concept, otherwise your API are inconsistent. Of course, you shouldn't do like a one-to-one mapping with the database, because then you don't want to expose ID or structure particularly. That's totally fine. Another thing, you need to use the HTTP response codes. Why you want to do this? Because there are a lot of HTTP response codes, and they're really useful. If you study a little about, you can find, okay, when my data is wrong, with JSON and try to post to create a new resource, you can use this. Everybody uses this. Or for example, method not allowed when you try to post on a resource that only can be called with a get. And so try to master this part because it's really, really useful. But why you should do that? Besides, because it's good to design the things in a specific way. For example, I like to think about domain-driven design. So each endpoint is for example, is a customer, or is a product, or is a cart. For example, in Spryker, we just built these cart items. It seems very simple, but to achieve this level of simplicity, you actually need to do a lot of work. And to come back, why you need to do it, all these good practices, because you can save literally time and money. You can make your application better and error-proof. In the past project, the application was working. We had the back and the front end, everything was working. We redesigned everything following these practices, and we saved 30% of the calls. We found invalid response, we find invalid calls, we find empty response. There were thousands and thousands of API calls of empty, completely empty. And this is money. If you're a company, you have servers, you spend a lot of money for it. So if you want to see other resources about In Spryker, we use the JSON API, that is just a way for building a RESTful API in a specific way. And then you can see, for example, another my presentation of this very good article, how to build the API with Symfony. Speaking about design, I almost didn't want to put these slides, but I was in meetups lately about design, and I had the chance to see so many useful information that I want to share with you. So if you think like literally about the conversation, you can, there is this girl working for Rasa.com. Rasa.com is actually another tool. It's very similar to WTAI, and to build chat and voice bots. And she wrote some like good practices for design. One, for example, always give a feedback. If someone passes an address and you match it, you find it, you know what it is, confirm it. Like, okay, oh, it's this address. Like, because maybe you just wrote it like very short and say, okay, it's this address. Use familiar concepts. Even if you are like building voice or chatbots, try to use as much as possible something that the user recognizes. You could, for example, in this case, it's like a tram ticket. You could use a QR code, right? If a company hires you to do this bot, you can just give a QR code. But showing the real ticket gives a sense of being complete for the user using it. Try also to remember that the user might not, it's not like web, it cannot scroll up, maybe in the chat, but it cannot remember everything. So if you already ordered several tickets and you say, okay, I want to pay, ask him, do you want to pay all the ticket, or do you want first to check your shopping cart? Another advice is, seems stupid, try to prevent errors, at least have fallbacks. So when, for example, in this case, you might not see the address is wrong, but you match it anyway. So try to ask him, like, do you mean this address? Or it will happen very often that you cannot match some intents or some sentences, then just give an answer, maybe proposing, like, I didn't understand, but proposing how you can say things. It's like, oh, did you mean that? Or you can ask for this. Another advice is always provide closure. So even if it's useless from a functional point of view, if he buys a ticket, if he buys something, just finish with the sentence so he knows that you understand and the conversation is closed. But then you can also think to try new things. This is actually my idea. If someone asks you when is the next train and you put a flag, you can actually translate it. If you put an icon like this, like the speaker, you can send a voice message. You can use IBM Watson or AWS for generating speech from text. So you can literally play with these things, and the possibilities becomes really a lot. Another thing I wanted to share with you is about these guys. They do lead generation, these visual bots. And I had the chance to speak with one of the founders, Livio Marcheschi, and they do lead generation. That means they created a tool for which you create a small ad on Facebook, it goes on the chatbot, and then, for example, you know, when someone wants to send you a white paper, or you want to have a new mortgage or a new car, and they make you several questions, and then they send you the offer. What they found out, and I wanted to share with you, is that differently from web, where you have a funnel, where at each step you are scared that your user might drop, what we found out is that after the third question, till the question number 9, nobody dropped. So it means if a user is engaged, then he's going to keep being engaged, because then he's interested in what you are proposing to him. And this is actually counterintuitive for anybody coming from web. Another thing I want to share with you is there are literally a lot of news the latest 2 weeks. One is from Amazon. So Amazon already have like some new devices like the Echo Show, the Echo Spot, and you can actually send images. It's called a DAC. So you need now to think that when in a chatbot you would send an image, in Alexa you should send a voice message, but also the same image, maybe not with the same like size or the same properties. They even have Alexa buttons. You can build games, like quiz games. They just created a tool that you can put in your car to speak with Alexa while you're driving. Even a microwave. So as I said, everybody's competing for your time, for those gaps where you're not supposed to use technology because you shouldn't drive and text, and they are competing. And as I said before, it's a like chess game because literally 2 days ago, Facebook announced Portal. It's just a big iPad with a camera that zooms on you when you speak. It is connected with Facebook Messenger, and it also has Alexa. And Facebook itself introduced another thing to make the life easier for a business. It's called personas. So when you are in a chatbot connected to a page, you usually would speak with the page, right? Whatever shop it is. And so it becomes very personal. But if you have a chatbot, you want to then switch to a person, to customer care, then now they have a persona, so you're going to inform you, okay, now you're going to speak with this girl, that she's from this department. And maybe your package is lost or is returned, and then you want your money back, and then you speak with this other person, and she's from finance. So this is very powerful tool. It literally has 2 days. Another thing I wanted to show you is some information. This is mostly later when you will download the slides about machine learning. A lot of people ask me, like, oh, I need to know machine learning to do bots. Yes and no. I mean, to start, you don't need it. You have tools like Liter, WTAI, you insert your sentences, you play with it, and it works. Because WTAI does mostly natural language processing, so that's what you need. But you might want one day, and then you can use Python. There are several tools for doing it, and I will show you some links in the next slide, to do supervised learning. So supervised learning means that once you know, for example, that sentence, that group of sentences match that intent, from the user, or that path leads to a successful outcome, you can actually train a model in machine learning in Python, and then you need, at the beginning, you need to say which is the training data, which is the test data, so you always need to have someone that's why it's supervised. And when that is good, you do several iterations, then you can use unsupervised. So it's almost the same algorithms, but they're then unsupervised. And then we'll probably put somewhere if something cannot match. The step from supervised to unsupervised is not easy. Another thing that you don't need now, and might need one day if you really have a successful project and you have a lot of data, is deep learning neural networks. And this is what is mostly used sometimes for face recognition, for I don't know, for recognizing object, moving person, and so on. What I want to give to you is this list of links, and literally go because they are amazing. From Facebook Developer Circle, there are these 3 lessons, and you can literally do one by one. The most important is like natural language processing, at least for the chat and voice bots, because there is this tool called Spacey, and even one of the founder of Codete actually did a presentation about. Spacey is a Python library that is ready for English, and it can match any intent and any word already. So you don't need, if you have enough data, then you can retrain your Spacey, your machine learning, and then just use Python, and you don't need to pay WT, Watson, or anybody. About other interesting things, for example, some books. This is some books I read. Depending on your experience and what you're expecting, they might not satisfy you completely because they speak of different things. But they're a good start. You can read this stuff, and then you will have a better understanding of the different way of building a chat and voice bot. And as the last thing, I want to show you a small video from Spriker. There's actually the other project that I did are linked here. And this shows this simple Alexa skill that then we did an hackathon and we allowed people to develop on Spriker, and in just like an hour they could do the skill without problems.
We also have the classic Alexa voice example. So, Alexa, open beverages.
Would you like to have some coffee or some tea?
I want some tea.
Would you like black or green tea?
I want green tea.
Your order will be shipped with same-minute delivery. Your payment method is a smile. To confirm your order, say, yes, Spriker, and smile. Do you confirm?
Yes, Spriker.
Your order is on its way.
Seems like it's really easy to implement something pretty fast.
Your order will be shipped with same-minute delivery. Your payment method is a smile.
In the beginning, it sounded like a tough challenge, but then when you get into it and are in the development tunnel, it's quite way easier than initially thought.
And I think that was the last slide. Not changing anymore. Yeah. So you can also download the presentation. You can actually scan the QR code. It's the same link, and you can write me or if you want to make any question. And then thank you.